What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is going to be like my first cycling specific video on this channel, and I'll also be posting this on my Instagram as well. In this video today, we're gonna be covering road bikes for beginners. And if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to let me know and I'll be sure to do more of them. I was asked to do this because I get a lot of questions, and people ask me a lot. Probably like the second or third most common question of mine is like, Eric, how do I get started with road biking? Like, what bike should I buy? What brands do you recommend? All this different stuff. And hopefully I can cover a lot of that in this video. I'm just gonna go about this. Like, I wanted to bust out the camera and make a video for you guys because I've been getting this question a lot. This is just gonna be straight to the point, no BS. I don't work for any bike brands. I'm not sponsored by any bike brands or anything like that. So I'm just gonna go about this like I would be if I was talking to somebody on the street, because there's especially right now in this day and age, bikes in general are just being like, everybody's buying bikes right now, you know, because they don't have access to gyms and people just want to be active, which is awesome. This is like amazing. I've worked in 2 different bike shops over the years. I worked actually here in San Diego. And so I've been in the industry, and I've sold bikes to people, and I know what works and what doesn't work with beginners and riding road bikes. And there are a lot of different bikes out there. There's mountain bikes, there's cyclocross bikes, there's hybrid bikes, there's just so many different bikes. But for this video, we're gonna be just talking about road bikes. Now, I'm a roadie myself. I've ridden mountain bikes before, but I choose road bikes because I love road bikes. And all those other bikes are cool too, but we're just gonna be talking about road bikes here. Now, when it comes down to buying road bikes, generally, the number one thing that I would run into the most, especially like selling bikes to the average person, was, you know, people will go into stores like Target and Walmart, for example, and they'll see bikes that are around the, you know, $100, $200, $300 range, and then go into a bike shop and see bikes that are in the $500, $600, $700, $800, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 range, and go, okay, what am I getting from your bikes versus a Walmart and Target bike? And the number one thing is, you know, when you look at bikes that come out of a Target and a Walmart, like, I'm not knocking those bikes at all because they're bicycles, but they're mass produced, and there's not a lot, the quality that's put into those bikes is going to be a lot different than the quality that's put into a bike that you get out of a local bike shop. We'll talk more about that in just a few moments, about, you know, buying a bike from a local bike shop versus a Walmart and Target bike. But just so you guys know, there's a lot of, you know, details that matter when it comes down to buying a bike. Going back to, you know, when you go online and you see all these different options when it comes down to road bikes, there's a bike for everybody out there. I'm 100,000% convinced of that. When it comes down to buying your first road bike, it's very wise to kind of think about what you envision yourself doing with the road bike. And you may think of, you know, okay, well, I'm just gonna ride it once per week, and it's just gonna be it. But a lot of times I find that people get into riding road bikes and they fall in love with it. And that one time a week turns into 3 or 4 times a week. And then the road bike that they bought, that they envision themselves only riding once a week, isn't gonna hold up to what they're now wanting to do, which is riding way more. The thing about road bikes, and I'm trying to think of an analogy here, think about buying a fishing pole. If you're a person who likes fishing, and the components on the fishing pole, with all that mashing whenever you're trying to reel in a fish that's, you know, 7 pounds at your local lake, and you take that out into the deep ocean, you're obviously gonna need a way more hardcore fishing pole. So the components within the fishing pole matter a lot. So that 30, 40 bucks that you spend on the fishing pole versus the probably hundreds of dollars that you're gonna spend on a way more durable fishing pole to take on the open water out in the ocean, to take on way bigger fish, is exactly what you're gonna need to think about when you look at road bikes. The bikes that are 200 to 300 bucks are gonna have way less durable components than the bikes that are $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. And that money really does matter. The cool thing now is that in 2020, bikes are equipped with components for amazing prices. But we'll talk about that here in just a few seconds. But I really wanted to bring up the whole point of having a goal with the bike, just so you guys get an idea of what you're gonna be doing with the bike before you just spend money on a bike. The number one thing that I recommend for you guys to do first and foremost is to, and this is all just my personal opinion, You guys can go anywhere else on the internet and read and do anything you want, but this is what I would do in a situation where a beginner is looking to get into the sport of road cycling. Go into your local bike shop, support your local bike shop. A lot of people buy bikes online nowadays, and it's kind of like buying clothes online nowadays. Like, you're not gonna be able to try out the clothes and see if they're fit to you before you buy them. Like, I personally would never buy a suit online without knowing what it looks like on me. So why would I do that for a bike? My number one suggestion for anybody looking to get into the sport of road biking is to go into your local bike shop, sit on a bike, test ride a bike if you can. You know, right now, that's the other thing too, is that a lot of local bike shops are running out of bikes, but it may not be the case for your local bike shop. But my number one suggestion is to go into your local bike shop and test ride road bikes, sit on them and see how they feel. And you never know, you might just find one that you really, really like that's gonna be exactly what you want. Be prepared for the prices to be more than you expect. And that's another thing that I ran into the most when I was in the shop, is that people would come in and expect the bikes to be, they expected the bikes to be way more cheaper than they thought they would be. And it's just, bikes are, if you want a nice bike, you're gonna get what you pay for if you go to a local bike shop. So that being said, I have a road bike right here, obviously. This is a carbon bike. Now, you don't have to buy a carbon bike right off the bat. Generally with bikes, you're gonna see steel, aluminum, carbon, and sometimes titanium, but that's very, very rare. The same thing with steel. You don't really see a lot of steel bikes nowadays, at least when you're talking about road bikes, but it's mainly aluminum and carbon. And now aluminum bikes are usually what you'll find on most entry-level beginner bikes. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of aluminum bikes out there that just, they do the job super well. I ride carbon bikes because carbon frames are generally stronger, more durable, and they're way lighter, but they do cost more. So keep that into consideration. Now, that is the number one thing when it comes down to carbon. Now, we could get into the specifics of wheels and carbon, you know, handlebars and all that different stuff, but really, again, relaying this back to the fact that this is for beginners, and this is something that's like, if you're a beginner looking to get into the sport, you don't need to worry about having carbon wheels and all of that stuff at this stage of the game. I mean, bikes can get really, really overwhelming. And so I would say, if you're just somebody looking to get into the world of road cycling, don't worry about having the most ultra lightweight bike out there. Now, if you find yourself really loving the sport more, definitely go for it. But I tend to not want to overcomplicate things for beginners. The number two thing people usually do when they go into a local bike shop and they see a road bike they like, is they pick it up and they're like, "Ooh, this is super light." Like, that's great. You know, weight is going to matter, but I'm gonna say this, and this is just the truth. Like, when you're looking at the weight of a bike, it's like, obviously it's a bike that you're gonna be riding, you're gonna be taking it around the road. But if you're looking to get faster, the best way to do that is usually dropping weight yourself. And that's usually what happens when you do ride road bikes, is I find that, like, a lot of people try to meticulously worry about all the weight that they can save by getting carbon handlebars and carbon wheels and carbon stem and all this stuff. But actually losing weight on people generally tends to make them faster. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, you know, that actually kind of makes sense." I just had to point that out. What does matter though on beginner bikes is components. So that's what you see right here. This is called the drivetrain. So I'm once again making this video this is gonna be very basic. I can make this way more complicated than it needs to be, but I won't. The drivetrain is basically this part. So you have the crank, and you have the cassette, and you have the rear derailleur, the front derailleur, and this is stuff, these are the moving parts on the bike, okay? So when your bike shifts, you're gonna want the shifts to be clean and smooth. And so just like you would have components in that fishing pole earlier that are entry level, mid-level, and higher end, you're gonna have components on the bike that are entry level, mid-level, and higher end. And so I have Shimano Ultegra on this bike that's mechanical. There's mechanical shifting, and then there's also electronic shifting. Electronic shifting is not commonly gonna be found on your beginner level bikes. You're gonna find that more on mid-level to higher end bikes. It's gonna be on my next bike. Stay tuned for that. Actually should be built here in a day or two. So it's gonna be, I'll put that on this channel. Entry level components typically are, again, what you're gonna be finding on most of your bikes. So I have Shimano on this bike, but you're also gonna see SRAM. We're just gonna talk about Shimano. So the way that Shimano does it is they have categories for the group sets, and it starts with Claris. So it does Shimano Claris, and then it goes Shimano Sora, and then it goes Shimano Tiagra, then it goes Shimano 105, and then it goes Shimano Ultegra, and then it goes Shimano Dura-Ace. Those are the categories. So Claris, Sora, and Tiagra, those are gonna be your entry-level group sets. Ultimately, I feel like actually it'll go up to the 105 as well. Those are where you're gonna see the performance of your group sets. And I was talking earlier about the cleanness of the shifting, the weight of the group set, how much you have to maintain your group set. And this is gonna come, every time this shifts, like I said earlier, moving parts of the bike, this is gonna come out of adjustment. It's gonna skip. I know you guys have heard of chain skipping before. These are the things that require work and where you're putting a lot of your force onto the bike. So whenever I go over cycling with people and I talk about what really does matter, the group set is what I think really matters. So when you see group sets with Shimano Claris, with Sora, with Tiagra, all of those, when you're explaining them to people, they don't really understand what they actually mean. It's just a name to most people. But when people look into buying their first road bike, they're not really taking into consideration how much that does matter. So after, you go to your local bike shop and you test out a bunch of different bikes, realize that if you go into it expecting to only pay, I'm gonna go in and spend 600 bucks on a road bike, it's not really just gonna stop there, because you have your group sets and you have all of that, but you're also gonna have to pay more ideally, because you're gonna want clip-in shoes, you're gonna need your helmet. So just keep into consideration that there's gonna be additional costs involved. Now, I was talking about earlier about the group sets, and I'm trying to explain this without sounding I'm trying not to overcomplicate this at all, but if you're a beginner looking to get into the sport, I would recommend any of those group sets. I think Shimano's done amazing with Sora, Claris, Tiagra, and Shimano 105s. Take into consideration too that if you go for Shimano 105s, it's gonna last a lot longer, it's gonna be a lot more durable, you're gonna have to service it a lot less than all the other group sets that I mentioned, the Sora, the Claris, and all of that. It's gonna be lighter as well. Before I go on further, my bike's super dirty right now. But a lot of people will actually go into Ultegra as well. I don't hear of a lot of people going straight into a Dura-Ace group set, but just really take that into consideration too. Is like, once again, going back to the fact that you do get what you pay for with most local bike shops and everything, and it's really worth it to go in and test ride a bike and just see what it's all about. But also, like I mentioned earlier, realize that there's gonna be additional costs to the bike rather than just the bike itself. You always have to take that into consideration. The number 2 thing that I recommend, going back to what I said earlier, clip-in pedals. A lot of people buy bikes and they just expect themselves to just hop on the bike and just pedal around. These will literally make you so much more efficient. They will improve the quality of your rides so much if you get clip-in pedals. It takes a huge amount of learning, but it's so worth it. Basically, if you don't know what I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but you clip in with your foot and you ride. So that would be the next thing that I recommend. The next thing that's really huge, I just talked about the feet, but your saddle. You really want to dial in, for all beginners, this is something that I wanted to mention too, is optimizing your contact points in the bike. So there's 3 contact points. So your hands, your feet, sorry, it's been a long day. Your hands, your feet, and your butt. Now, I feel like if you're gonna spend money, put it towards your butt. I spent 200 bucks on this saddle and it was worth it because I spent a lot of time. Like if I'm gonna get uncomfortable anywhere else, like on my body during a bike ride, I'm gonna not wanna be uncomfortable where my butt is. It really matters. So saddles can be another intimidating part about buying a road bike, but just know that it gets comfortable the more you ride. And that's why you gotta get padded shorts and all that. So the big question after I just went over all the contact points, the components, everything else, and just gave you guys my opinion, is how much should you expect to spend on an entry-level road bike? If you're just a beginner, if you're just looking to get into it, which is what everybody always says, before they end up, going, oh, I love this and I want to buy another bike. It's how much should you spend on your first entry-level road bike? In my personal opinion, if you're a beginner looking to get into the sport, I would expect to spend on the road bike itself between $600 to $1,100 or even into the $1,200 range. Now you could even spend between $600 and even upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 on their first road bike. It really just depends on what your budget is and what you're comfortable with spending. The cool thing about road cycling is that you can take it and do anything you want with it. You can ride your bike anywhere, assuming you live in an area that allows you to do that. And you can just do so much with it. So if this video was helpful in some way, shape, or form, please let me know down in the comments below. Let me know if you guys want to see more cycling related videos. I love to go over more nutrition and health related aspects within cycling and how much it's benefited me. I have a ton of ideas with it. So if you guys like this video, be sure to let me know down below and I'll be back with another video. I'll see you guys in the next one.